Breaking news from around your world on this Friday, April 5th, 2019. I'm Larry Rice. President Donald Trump said Thursday that an epic trade deal with China was nearly done, but could take a few more weeks. He said he would hold a summit meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping to sign an agreement and end the U.S. China trade war once the remaining issues are resolved, including how to dial back tariffs imposed during a dispute that has rattled global markets. Trump met at the White House on Thursday with Liu He, China's vice premier and special trade envoy, who traveled to Washington this week for a new round of trade talks. Trump said Thursday that the talks were going well and the world's two largest economies were getting closer to the biggest deal ever made. The talks resume Friday. China and the U.S. are working to end a standoff that has shaken financial markets and darkened the outlook for the world economy. The two countries have made considerable progress on the issues that divide them. China, for example, last month passed a law that loosens restrictions on foreign investment and aims to prevent Chinese officials from forcing foreign firms to hand over technology. Beijing is also expected to agree to sharply increase purchases of U.S. goods, putting a dent in America's massive trade deficit with China, which came to a record $379 billion last year. European Council President Donald Tusk is proposing to offer the United Kingdom a 12-month flexible extension to its Brexit date, according to a senior EU source. His plan would allow the UK to leave sooner if Parliament ratifies a deal, but it would need to be agreed to by EU leaders at a summit next week. The UK Conservatives and Labour Party are set to continue Brexit talks later. Attorney General Geoffrey Cox told the BBC that if they fail, the delay is likely to be a long one. The UK is due to leave the EU on April 12th, and as yet, no withdrawal date has been approved by members of Parliament. Downing Street said technical talks between Labour and Conservatives on Thursday had been productive and would continue on Friday. Prime Minister Theresa May has said a further postponement to the Brexit date is needed if the UK is to avoid leaving the EU without a deal, a scenario that both EU leaders and many British MPs believe would create problems for businesses and cause difficulties at ports. However, the Prime Minister wants to keep any delay as short as possible. To do that, she and Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn would need to agree to a proposal for MPs to vote on before April 10th, when EU leaders are expected to consider any extension request at an emergency summit. WikiLeaks tweeted Thursday that Ecuador plans to expel the anti-secrecy site's founder, Julian Assange, from its London embassy within hours to days and has reached an agreement with the United Kingdom for his arrest. WikiLeaks said the plan was in response to its recent tweet linking to a website alleging corruption during Ecuadorian President Lenin Moreno's service as a United Nations special envoy. Assange jumped bail and sought refuge in the embassy in 2012 to avoid extradition to Sweden for questioning on rape allegations. Assange also wants to avoid being sent to the United States to face possible punishment for publishing secret government documents. A senior Ecuadorian official told the Associated Press that no decision has been made regarding Assange. The city of Chicago said Thursday it will sue Jussie Smollett for money spent investigating what officials say was a phony, racist, anti-gay attack that Smollett staged. The former Empire actor has refused to reimburse the investigative costs. Mayor Rahm Emanuel's law chief sent Smollett a March 28th letter demanding he pay $130,106.15 for overtime worked by detectives and officers into looking into his claims. It set Thursday as the deadline to pay. The city said in a Thursday evening statement that it was already drafting a lawsuit in response and would file it in the near future. Smollett, who is black and gay, maintains he told the truth in reporting that two masked men assaulted him in downtown Chicago January 29th, shouting slurs and wrapping a rope around his neck. The lawsuit could lead to a civil trial where jurors would have to answer the question of whether Smollett orchestrated the attack. There will be no criminal trial on that question after Cook County prosecutors last week dropped all 16 felony counts against Smollett, saying they believe they could prove the charges, but that it wasn't worth the time and expense. If a civil case is decided in the city's favor and Smollett still refuses to pay, his bank accounts could be frozen and his wages garnished. Thousands of firefighters and soldiers are gaining the upper hand Friday in the battle against wildfires in South Korea, which have killed at least one person and forced more than 4,000 other people to flee their homes. The South Korean government said the fires broke out in eastern Gangwon province Thursday evening and spread to the cities of Sokcho and Gangneung, burning about 1,300 acres, nearly 200 homes, warehouses, and other buildings by early Friday, according to the government. More than 2,260 citizens were evacuated to gymnasiums and schools by early Friday, down from about 4,230 citizens earlier. 52 schools were closed. The government said the fire in the Sokcho region has been contained, while about 50% of the fire in the Gangneung region was contained as well. President Moon Jae-in has ordered the use of all available resources to extinguish the forest fires. More than 870 fire trucks and some 3,250 firefighters from all over the country are currently working to contain the fires. In addition, the Ministry of Defense said some 16,500 soldiers, 32 military helicopters, and 26 military fire trucks have been deployed as well, and the government plans to provide meals for 6,800 people. Saudi Arabia is threatening to sell its oil in currencies other than the dollar if Washington passes a bill exposing OPEC members to U.S. antitrust lawsuits. That's according to three sources familiar with Saudi energy policy. They said the option has been discussed internally by senior Saudi energy officials in recent months. The chances of the U.S. legislation, known as NOPEC, coming into force are slim, and Saudi Arabia would be unlikely to follow through. But the fact that Riyadh is considering such a drastic step is a sign of the kingdom's annoyance about potential U.S. legal challenges to OPEC. In the unlikely event Riyadh were to ditch the dollar, it would undermine the U.S. dollar's status as the world's main reserve currency, reducing Washington's clout in global trade and weakening its ability to enforce sanctions on nation states. One of the sources familiar with the matter said, "The Saudis say, let the Americans pass NOPEC, and it would be the U.S. economy that would fall apart." Saudi Arabia's energy ministry did not respond to a request for comment. NOPEC, or the No Oil Producing and Exporting Cartels Act, was first introduced in 2000 and aims to remove sovereign immunity from U.S. antitrust law, paving the way for OPEC states to be sued for curbing output in a bid to raise oil prices. Energy Secretary Rick Perry has said that NOPEC could lead to unintended consequences. Two former cabinet ministers expelled from Canada's ruling Liberal Party this week kept up pressure on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on Thursday, saying he should have apologized for inappropriately trying to influence a criminal proceeding. The 2-month-old scandal centers on Jody Wilson-Raybould, who said in February that officials had leaned on her while she was Justice Minister last year to ensure construction company SNC-Lavalin Group escaped a corruption trial. Former Treasury Board Chief Jane Philpott resigned her post because she disagreed with how Trudeau had handled the matter. He ousted both women from the Liberal caucus on Tuesday in a bid to end a scandal undermining his support ahead of a federal election in October. In an interview with the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, Philpott said, "There is very good evidence that there were attempts to have political interference with a very serious criminal trial." Wilson-Raybould, in an interview with Toronto's Globe and Mail newspaper, said Trudeau should have accepted responsibility and apologized to Canadians. Wilson-Raybould has said officials urged her to overrule prosecutors who insisted SNC-Lavalin face trial on charges of bribing Libyan officials between 2001 and 2011. The firm wanted to take advantage of a law passed last year allowing it to escape with a fine. Trudeau has denied any wrongdoing, saying he and officials had wanted to make sure Wilson-Raybould understood the potential for job losses if SNC-Lavalin were found guilty. Mackenzie Bezos said Thursday that she is giving her ex-husband, Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos, 75% of their Amazon stock and full control of voting on those shares. The ex-wife announced the move on Twitter after the couple finished dissolving their marriage. She tweeted, "Happy to be giving him all of my interests in the Washington Post and Blue Origin, and 75% of our Amazon stock, plus voting control of my shares to support his continued contributions with the teams of those incredible companies." She added, "Grateful for the past as I look forward to what comes next." Jeff Bezos posted his own tweet thanking his wife for her kindness in the divorce proceedings. The billionaire Amazon founder and his wife, a novelist, announced their divorce after 25 years of marriage in January. Shortly after the announcement, the National Enquirer ran a story about an extramarital affair Jeff Bezos was involved in. The Amazon founder accused the tabloid of trying to extort him with intimate photos of him and girlfriend Lauren Sanchez. An attorney representing the magazine's parent company, American Media, has denied those allegations. Japan's space agency said its Hayabusa 2 spacecraft released an explosive onto an asteroid to make a crater on its surface and collect underground samples to find possible clues to the origin of the solar system. Friday's crater mission is the riskiest for Hayabusa 2, as it had to immediately get away so it would not get hit by flying shards from the blast. The Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, or JAXA, said that the Hayabusa 2 dropped a small carry-on impactor made of copper onto the asteroid Friday morning, and that the spacecraft safely evacuated and remained intact. JAXA is analyzing further details. The copper explosive is the size of a baseball, weighing 2 kilograms, or about 4.4 pounds. JAXA plans to send Hayabusa 2 back to the site later when the dust and debris settle for observations from above and to collect samples from underground that have not been exposed to the sun or space radiation. Scientists hope the samples will be crucial to determine the history of the asteroid and our own planet. If successful, it would be the first time for a spacecraft to take such materials. In a 2005 deep impact mission to a comet, NASA observed fragments after blasting the surface, but did not collect them. The Japanese spacecraft is scheduled to leave the asteroid at the end of 2019 and bring surface fragments and underground samples back to Earth in late 2020. The asteroid, named Ryugu after an undersea palace in a Japanese folktale, is about 300 million kilometers from Earth, or about 180 million miles. And that's your update for this Friday, April 5th, 2019. I'm Larry Rice. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend.